Thanks to shoddy police work and artificial intelligence, this woman spent 5 months in jail for a crime that was committed in a state that she'd never even been to. Right, so this is Angela Lipp. She's a 50-year-old grandmother of 5 from Tennessee. And in fact, she spent nearly her entire life in northern Tennessee, with the full extent of her traveling being, to surrounding states. And so it definitely caught her by surprise when she was arrested and extradited for bank fraud in North Dakota. Right, because last summer, police in Fargo, North Dakota, they were investigating a string of bank frauds that took place in April and May. And in at least 4 of those, the same woman showed a fake military ID card with stolen personal information and withdrew money from a bank account or a home equity line of credit. And the West Fargo Police Department, they took this surveillance footage from these frauds and decided to ask its intelligence unit to identify a person of interest using an AI-powered facial recognition app called Clearview AI. Right, and Clearview AI, it actually works by scraping billions of photos from social media sites, and it's used by hundreds of local police departments, the Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI. Though they pointedly say that it's not meant to be used on its own, but as a tool within the broader investigation process. And you had the company saying, it generates leads. It does not make identifications, draw conclusions, or recommend arrests. When using Clearview AI's platform, independent corroboration by trained law enforcement professionals is required. And as you have picked up by this point, that is not what happened. Right, the West Fargo police said that the Clearview AI, quote, identified a potential suspect with similar features to Angela Lipp's, and they passed that information onto the Fargo police. And they then tracked down Angela's Facebook and Instagram and her Tennessee driver's license, with the Fargo police detective determining that Angela matched the suspect that Clearview AI offered, which was then apparently enough probable cause for the Cass County State's Attorney's Office to charge Angela with 8 felonies, 4 counts of unauthorized use of personal identifying information, and 4 counts of property theft. Right, and then in July, a judge signs an arrest warrant authorizing nationwide extradition of Angela to Fargo. And within 2 weeks, U.S. Marshals arrested Angela in Tennessee at gunpoint while she was babysitting 4 young kids. They were then booked in jail in Tennessee as a fugitive from justice from North Dakota, and she was there for more than 3 months. And that's despite repeatedly saying that she had never even been to North Dakota. But she was told that if she wanted to fight the charges, she'd have to allow herself to be extradited. And come October, that is exactly what happened, with Angela writing in a GoFundMe post. It was the first time I had ever been on an airplane. I was terrified and exhausted and humiliated. And this is where the real kicker is. After meeting with her, Angela's attorney, Jay Greenwood, he did some pretty standard level digging into the case. He spoke with her family and friends who sent over some bank records showing that she had been making deposits and withdrawals in Tennessee at the same time the frauds in North Dakota were happening. So you had her attorney saying the authorities blindly trusted the AI and, quote, made 0 other efforts to corroborate that identification. And adding, nor did they do any interviews with her or people in her orbit to determine whether they had the right person. And so as a result of that, Angela spent 5 months in jail. It wasn't until just before Christmas that the charges were dismissed. And then on Christmas Eve, Angela was finally released from custody in North Dakota. But then she also didn't have any way to get back home.
I had summer clothes on and no coat, and it was so cold outside and snow on the ground. I'm scared. I'm scared about that too. I wanted out, but I didn't know what I was going to do, how I was going to get home.
For the Fargo police, they didn't even pay for any expenses. In fact, local defense attorneys put her up in a hotel room and got her money for food off for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And then from there, she was driven to Chicago so she could get back to Tennessee. And because of her lengthy stay in jail, she wasn't able to pay her bills at home. And so when she got back to Tennessee, she had lost everything: her house, her car, even her dog. But the reason that we're talking about this now is because the police in North Dakota have recently come out to admit their, quote, missteps in handling the case, pointing to West Fargo and saying they weren't aware their neighbor had used a new AI system, and they have since prohibited its use going forward. Right? And that, along with a complete overhaul of their use of AI as well, with the Fargo police chief saying, we're happy to acknowledge when we make errors, and we've made a few in this case for sure. We certainly apologize for any effect or adverse effect that this has had on trust in the community. Though he notably stopped short of apologizing to Angela directly, and when he was called out about that, he responded by saying that they are still investigating the Fargo bank frauds and that it must be carried out by a large criminal organization, saying. So I think that's an appropriate question and response at the right time, but we do not know definitively who's involved and who's not at this juncture. Though, of course, Angela's attorneys were quick to mention that there is no evidence connecting her to bank frauds. And so then with that, we know that they're planning to file a lawsuit, and they're specifically looking into why she was held for so long, especially when the bank records to exonerate her were readily available. And so you had her attorneys saying, we believe that Angela's lengthy detention was unnecessary and should have been avoided with a proper investigation by law enforcement. And I will say it's also worth noting that the same police chief who stopped short of apologizing to Angela has also conveniently just retired, with him even shooting down questions about Angela at his retirement press conference. And so yeah, AI apparently not just coming for a lot of people's jobs. In the wrong hands, it's also taking away people's freedom, which is just absolutely insane. And it then begs the question of, are there other cases like this in the United States? And if so, how many?